Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over the top 10 movie cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now these cars are all from very famous movies, very famous TV shows. They're cars that you guys are probably all going to know about. I'm going to say this at the start of the video, I've actually chosen to leave Fast and Furious cars off of this list because I feel like in the GTA community, and especially in the GTA car community, the Fast and Furious thing has been done to death. Like, you could probably watch this video and you'd expect to see Paul Walker's Supra, or you could probably expect to see Paul Walker's R34 GTR. You could probably expect to see Dom's Charger. All of that stuff has been done to death, and I felt like I was just going to leave it off of this list, so I actually have. All of the other cars in this list are going to be from movies, TV shows, stuff like that you guys will probably know. We're going to go ahead and get into this. We're going to start off with number 10. And number 10, just to go ahead and get this one out of the way, we of course have the Imponte Dukes from the Dukes of Hazzard. And of course this is the General Lee. Now you can't put the Confederate flag on the roof of it, and I probably wouldn't anyways, even if you could, just for cancellation reasons. Obviously the Dukes of Hazzard and the General Lee are pretty popular cars. In my town, there's actually a General Lee with the exact Confederate flag on the roof and everything, which is kind of shocking, but it is around. The Dukes can be had for $62,000 if you are not a returning player. However, if you are a returning player, you can get this thing for absolutely no cost on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, which is really nice. It is a pretty solid car. It's very, very quick in a straight line, not very good around the corners. Of course, it's an old muscle car, and it's definitely a pretty easy one to recreate because of the relatively low cost of it. So that's pretty much it for the Imponte Dukes and the General Lee, and that is it for number 10. So let's go ahead and move on to number 9. Next up at number 9, we have the classy Gang Burrito, and this thing goes for $86,000. And of course, it is based off of the A-Team van from the A-Team. Shocking, I know. Now the Gang Burrito, it's a van, and it's not very quick. It's one of the slower vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online. However, you're probably not buying this thing for performance. You're buying it because you're trying to recreate the A-Team van, if you are trying to recreate it, of course. The A-Team was very, very popular back in the day. They actually made a spin-off movie relatively recently, I think in like 2008 or something like that. So a lot of the older folks that are going to be watching this video are probably going to know a little bit more about this vehicle than most of us younger guys. I do, of course, know what the A-Team is, but some of you guys may not. This is, of course, the van from the A-Team. So there you go. Doesn't have the greatest acceleration, doesn't have the greatest handling, but honestly, for a van, it could be a lot worse. This thing is actually relatively impressive for what it is. And it's pretty cool looking. The Gang Burrito, it's not a bad vehicle, and for 86 grand, you really can't go wrong with this thing. So that's pretty much it for the Gang Burrito. Let's move on to number 8. Next up at number 8, we have the Mach 5 from, you guessed it, Speed Racer. Now, Speed Racer used to be really, really popular. I actually ended up going and seeing one of the Speed Racer movies when I was a bit younger, so I am quite familiar with this vehicle. Now, the Scramjet is a pretty well-known vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online. Most of you guys are probably going to know lots and lots about this thing. Of course, it has a rocket boost. It also has a jump boost as well, which is pretty cool. And this is one of the faster vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online. I think top speed-wise, the Scramjet is truly one of the quickest. Now, it's also equipped with missiles as well as front-mounted machine guns, so that is pretty cool, and the tracking on these missiles is very, very good. So if you want to kill oppressors, the Scramjet is a pretty good way of doing it. The only problem is the Scramjet is very, very weak. This thing has absolutely no armor, so you're going to have to rely on the rocket booster to dodge missiles, which doesn't always work, and there is quite a long recharge on the rocket boost as well. So if you guys do want a Scramjet, it is going to cost you quite a bit of money. This thing goes for $4.6 million, which is that is a little bit on the expensive side. It's a great vehicle, definitely not my favorite, but it is still a very, very good vehicle, no doubt about it. Definitely pick up a Scramjet if you guys are interested, especially obviously if you like Speed Racer. That's it for number 8. Let's move on to number 7. Next up at number 7, we have the Bravado Yuga Classic coming in at about $140,000, and obviously, if you guys couldn't tell, this is supposed to be the mystery machine from Scooby-Doo. Now there's a livery that I've got on the vehicle, obviously, that you guys could see that is kind of doing its best to replicate the mystery machine. Obviously, Rockstar included this livery with the intention that this could look like the mystery machine. It's not quite there. I did paint the wheels yellow to try to match up with that, to try to make it as mystery machine as possible. Now the Yuga Classic is actually a pretty unique vehicle in GTA Online. Obviously, it's an older van. It actually has pretty decent performance, and I think that it actually looks really, really great. It also has lots of customization, and it's also able to be made into the Yuga Classic 4x4, which is pretty interesting. That happens at Benny's if you guys are interested, so that's pretty cool. I think that it's really awesome that Rockstar actually added this livery in order to make this thing into the mystery machine. I think that they do a pretty good job of keeping up with sort of pop culture sort of stuff with their cars. So I think that they did a great job with this thing. I think pretty much everybody likes Scooby-Doo. So that's about it for the mystery machine, or the Bravado Yuga Classic at number 7. It's time to move on to number 6. Next up at number 6, we have the Vapid Click, or of course Doc Hudson from Cars. Now, I've done my best to replicate Doc Hudson. Obviously you can't make it exactly like Doc Hudson, but I've done my best to replicate it. Now the Click goes for $900,000 and it is an absolutely fantastic car. This thing is formerly the fastest car around circuits in the muscle car category, so it's pretty cool. It actually has really decent performance for what it is, and you can make it look kind of like Doc Hudson. So that is of course really, really neat. I think that it's a really good looking car, and it definitely fits as Doc Hudson. You could argue that the Hermes could potentially be Doc Hudson as well. However, I feel like the Vapid Click is a little bit more true to scale, a little bit more true to size. I feel like the Hermes is a little bit of a bigger car and that it wouldn't quite work as well as Doc Hudson. Plus the performance of the Click is a lot better, so I think that's a little bit more accurate to Doc Hudson. So if you guys are big fans of cars, you can of course make a replica of Doc Hudson. Now there's actually lots of different vehicles that you could replicate from cars. You could do Chick very, very easily with the Willard faction, if you guys are interested in it, as well as several other different cars. We have the Gauntlet Classic Custom, which you could potentially make into Dynaco if you wanted to. So if you guys are big fans of cars, there are several of them out there. I just thought that Doc Hudson was one that I haven't really seen many people talk about, so I figured I would include it in this list. That's pretty much it for number 6. It's time to move on to number 5. Next up at number 5, we have literally the most expensive car in the entire game, which is of course the Imponte Ruiner 2000. Now the Ruiner 2000 is based heavily off of Kit from Knight Rider. I didn't actually know that the Ruiner 2000 was based off of this until people in my comments were absolutely roasting me, saying this thing looked like a James Bond car. Sorry guys, I messed up. Obviously this thing is Kit from Knight Rider. Now the Ruiner 2000, like I said, is one of the most expensive cars, if not, I think the actual most expensive car in all of Grand Theft Auto Online, which is pretty insane. This thing comes in at $5.7 million, and it's actually $5.75 million if I'm being honest, so it's even more money than I initially said, which is pretty crazy because that's a lot of money. However, what you do get for this insane cost is absolutely zero armor protection, which is great. This thing literally does in one shot. However, what it does get in actuality are the most aggressive tracking missiles in the entire game, so that is a pretty good feature. Obviously these shoot right out of the front of this thing. It does look super cool. You can see the missiles just sticking out of the front of it. On top of this, you also get front mounted machine guns. Now these machine guns are actually pretty weak. They don't really do a hell of a lot of damage, unfortunately, so you're gonna be stuck shooting for a while if you're trying to take out anybody else in a car or anything like that with the Ruiner 2000, which is unfortunate. You'd think for $5.7 million they could equip it with machine guns that were a little bit better than this, but unfortunately, as it turns out, no, they cannot do that. So that's unfortunate. Obviously you can also jump boost this thing, and then you can pull a parachute to try to get it to sail as far as you possibly can. It's kind of a cool feature. In practice, doesn't really come in useful very often at all, but it is still a pretty cool feature, and nonetheless it is still a very cool car, that's for sure. So anyway guys, that's pretty much it for the Imponte Ruiner 2000, or Kit from Knight Rider. At number 5, let's move on to number 4. Next up at number 4, we have the Vapid Ellie, coming in at $560,000. The Vapid Ellie is named after Eleanor, which is from the movie Bullet with Steve McQueen. Now the movie Bullet is very famous. It has one of the greatest movie car chase scenes in cinematic history, so it's a pretty popular movie for that reason. And a big part of the movie's popularity was of course the 1969, I believe it was, Mustang Fastback that's in the movie. It actually might have been a 67, correct me if I'm wrong. The Vapid Ellie is obviously based off of Eleanor, which is the name of the Mustang in Bullet, so Rockstar kind of did a nod to that movie and to the car in GTA Online. Now, the only thing that really sucks about this is, unfortunately, the Vapid Ellie is really not that great of a car in GTA, which really sucks. I would have hoped that Rockstar would have given this thing a fair shake at maybe being one of the faster muscle cars in the muscle car category, even at the time when this thing was released, but unfortunately, they didn't. This thing has a lot of issues. Unfortunately, it does not handle very well. It also suffered from engine resistance very heavily. It was sort of fixed recently, so that is good. But it's still not 100% back. It still has a relatively weak top speed, which does suck. Overall, it's kind of just a shame that this thing didn't really get a fair shot at being the car that it really should have been in GTA. Nonetheless, it's a very iconic car, and it is cool that Rockstar even did the nod to the movie in the first place. Now, a fun fact about the Mustang from Bullet, Ford has actually gone out and remade Mustangs since I believe 2018 or 2019, and actually called them the Bullet, and they come in this dark green color to commemorate Ellie from Bullet. So that's just something cool that I thought I would mention that Ford did. The Vapid Ellie is still a cool car despite it not being the greatest performer, and is definitely one to own if you're a big fan of Mustangs. So that's pretty much it for the Vapid Ellie at number 4. Let's move on to number 3. Next up, I'm sure you all saw this coming. This is of course the Vigilante, and it's obviously based off of the Batmobile from Batman. Now the Vigilante is a little bit on the expensive side. This thing goes for $3.75 million. However, for that price you do get some very, very unique features and some very cool features with the Vigilante. First of all, the Vigilante has front-mounted machine guns. Now unfortunately, these machine guns are pretty much the exact same as the Ruiner 2000s, where they do almost no damage, which kind of sucks. However, luckily it is also equipable with missiles that do have some of the most aggressive tracking in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. But the only unfortunate part is, despite the look of this thing, it actually has no armor resistance and no explosive resistance. So that kind of sucks. This thing is really, really good if you get your shot off first before somebody else does, but if they get their shot off first, I'm afraid you're as good as dead. However, you do have one ability that you might be able to use to get away from whoever's shooting at you. That is, of course, the rocket booster on the Vigilante. Now, if you use the rocket booster enough, the Vigilante actually becomes the quickest land vehicle in all of Grand Theft Auto Online on last-gen consoles and PC. So on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, this is actually the fastest vehicle in the game if you include its ability to use the rocket booster, which is pretty neat. The Vigilante also handles shockingly well, a lot better than I would have ever expected, honestly, and I do think that it is a really, really cool vehicle. I don't know if it's worth the cost of $3.75 million, but if you're a big Batman fan, this is probably going to be one that you're going to want to own absolutely. So that's pretty much it for the Vigilante at number 3, guys. It's time to move on to the next vehicle at number 2. Next up, we have the Karin Technical Aqua coming in at $1.5 million. Now, you guys might be a little bit confused, and you might be confused if you're not thinking a little bit outside of the box. Now, there is a huge machine gun on the back of this thing. However, pretend that that's not there, and you may recognize this from a certain British television show. And if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm talking about Top Gear. Now, the boys on Top Gear actually took a Toyota Hilux and went and strapped oil barrels to the side of it and actually made the thing buoyant and crossed from Great Britain all the way to France. Now, this is on television, you can find it, and it's even on YouTube as well. So if you guys are interested in this, it is very, very funny, and it is very cool as well. Of course, Top Gear was always a very popular show, and it still is to this day, even though the original hosts are on Amazon Prime now. The Karin Technical Aqua is a pretty interesting vehicle. It's not one that I use very often in Grand Theft Auto Online, but it is a cool one to own. And if you guys are big Top Gear fans, you might want to consider picking this thing up, because I do think that it is pretty cool to be able to do what Jeremy, James, and Richard did in Top Gear, but in GTA. Unfortunately, the Karin Technical Aqua doesn't have really any customization that you can do to it, and it's a relatively slow vehicle. However, it is a very capable off-roader, and of course, obviously, it is aquatic. Well, now that there's oil barrels on the side of it, so you can use it in the water as well. So it is kind of an ultimate off-roading vehicle due to the fact that it can be on land and obviously in the water as well. So it is maybe worth picking up if you guys are interested. It is a pretty cool vehicle. That's pretty much it for the Karin Technical Aqua, guys. And number 2, it's time to move on to the number 1 movie car in Grand Theft Auto Online. And of course, at number 1, we have probably the most iconic movie car of all time, which is the Dubocci JB700W, or the Aston Martin DB5 or DB6 from James Bond. Now, I think that everybody probably knows what this car is, or has at least heard of it, if not seen it. The JB700W is basically the exact same as the James Bond car, just in GTA. Now, unfortunately, the machine guns on this thing are a little bit less cool than the ones on the real car. They don't have Gatling guns or miniguns on them, so that is a little bit unfortunate, but it is still a pretty cool vehicle. Now, of course, it does have these front-mounted machine guns, like you guys can see that I'm using on this innocent Albany Cavalcade right here, and it's on. Oh, geez. Oh, okay. we're driving away from that. On top of this, it's also got an oil slick proximity mine dropper that you can drop behind you when you're driving away from people, and you can spin them out. It also has another different upgrade that you can do to drop spikes instead that will destroy the tires of anybody who's following you. So this is pretty cool. It has a few different options that you can do, which is pretty neat. The only thing that's missing is the ejector seat. Now, I would like to see an ejector seat on this thing, however, Rockstar did not include that for us, so that is a little bit sad, but it is still pretty cool that we have the JB700W in Grand Theft Auto Online. And something that I didn't realize until relatively recently, and you guys can make fun of me for this in the comments, the JB700 stands for James Bond, and then the 700 is obviously 007 backwards, and then the W stands for weaponized. So I think that's pretty cool. Rockstar obviously put a huge nod to James Bond into the game with adding this car. So I do think that that is pretty cool. Anyway guys, there you have it. Those are my picks for the top 10 movie cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. Let me know what cars I missed. I know that I definitely didn't get every single movie car. Obviously, I was limited to a top 10 with this video. But if you guys want a part 2 to this, let me know in the comments down below and I will be sure to try to make that video. Leave a like if you enjoyed or if you learned something, dislike if you didn't obviously, subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace!